It was just past midnight when I left work, taking the same quiet route I always did. My town isn't the kind of place where much happens. Long stretches of empty roads, cornfields on one side, thick woods on the other. The summer air was warm and still, and I had the top of my convertible down to feel the breeze. I was halfway home, just enjoying the quiet hum of the tires on the pavement, when I heard it. A scream. It wasn't the kind of scream you could mistake for anything else. It was sharp, raw, and terrified. A woman's voice echoing through the night. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, and just listened. Another cry came from the woods on my left. She was shouting for help. Without thinking, I grabbed the baton I kept in my back seat and stepped out, calling into the dark. "Who's out there?" The voice called back, trembling and desperate. "Please help me." I started running toward the sound, branches slapping against my arms as I pushed through the trees. Every few seconds, she'd cry out again, "Help!" And I'd change direction, chasing her voice deeper into the woods. But after a while, something felt wrong. The sound wasn't getting any closer. No matter how fast I ran, the voice stayed the same distance away, not fading, not growing louder, just constant. Not growing louder, just constant. I stopped moving, breathing hard, my flashlight beam trembling across the trees. My gut twisted. This didn't feel right, and the air felt heavy, like the woods were holding their breath. I shouted, "Where are you?" 5 seconds later, the same voice answered, "Help me." The same tone, the same distance away. That was enough. I turned and bolted back toward my car. Every step I took, I still heard her. That same scream, never closer, never farther. It was as if she were following me. When I finally broke through the tree line, my headlights looked like salvation. I jumped in, slammed the door, and tore out of there without looking back. Once I was on the main road, I grabbed my phone and called 911, reporting what I'd heard. The dispatcher said they'd send someone to check it out, but I didn't wait around. I just wanted to get home, forget it ever happened. For a week, I managed to push it out of my mind. Then I saw the news. A hiker found the body of a woman in those same woods. Early 30s, no signs of foul play. I stared at the TV, numb. That stretch of woods is huge, but I couldn't shake the feeling it was her. The same voice I heard crying out for help that night. And even now, when I drive past that road, I swear I still feel her there, waiting for someone else to stop.
The snow was coming down hard that night, thick flakes swirling through the beams of my headlights as I drove toward my friend John's cabin in Vermont. It was close to 1 in the morning, and the road ahead was pitch black.
Winding through mountains where cell service was nothing but a rumor.
I was alone in my old Ford pickup, the bed loaded with snowboarding gear. The hum of the heater, the only sound keeping me company. Then, out of nowhere, my dashboard lit up red. The temperature gauge shot into the danger zone. I cursed under my breath and slowed to a crawl before pulling onto the shoulder. The truck hissed as steam poured out from under the hood. The snow around me glowed orange from the taillights, but beyond that, it was total darkness. I popped the hood, cold air biting my face, and tried to see what was wrong. But in that freezing wind, with no light but my flashlight, I didn't stand a chance. I climbed back into the truck, tried to call John, but the screen mocked me. No service. I sat there for a while, watching the snow build up on my windshield, before trying to start the engine again. It idled fine, but as soon as I put it in drive, the needle spiked again. That's when I saw headlights in the mirror dim, cutting through the storm. I jumped out and waved my arms. The car slowed and pulled up beside me, a small Toyota. The driver rolled down his window, a man in his 40s, calm, almost too calm. "Truck trouble?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "it keeps overheating." "Can I use your phone? No reception out here." He hesitated for a moment. "You out here alone?" The question felt strange, but I nodded. "Just me." He smiled slightly, reached over and handed me his phone. I called John first, told him what happened, and he said he'd head my way. Then I called the towing company he recommended. The whole time, the man just sat there, eyes fixed on me, not saying a word. When I handed him his phone back, he gave a short nod and drove off into the night without another word. I got back into my truck and waited. It was so dark that when I switched off the headlights for a second, I couldn't even see my own hands. The silence pressed in from all sides. I tried distracting myself with a game on my phone until bang, a sudden violent knock on my passenger window. My heart nearly stopped. I looked over but could barely make out a shape in the dark. A man's voice shouted, panicked, "Please, please let me in, I'm freezing." He tugged on the handle, pounding on the glass. I flicked on my flashlight, aiming it toward the window. A man in a heavy black coat who'd pulled tight stood outside. I couldn't see his face. "What happened?" I yelled. He shouted back, "I'm stranded. Please, I'm going to die out here." His voice shook, but there was something about it, something rehearsed. I didn't move. Something deep inside me screamed not to open that door. He started slamming harder, shouting louder, desperate or pretending to be. I made my decision. I threw the truck into drive and hit the gas. As I climbed the next hill, my headlights caught the reflection of red taillights parked on the side of the road. A small Toyota, the same one from earlier. The driver's seat was empty. Snow around it was covered in fresh footprints leading straight toward where I'd been parked. My chest went cold. That man begging to get in it was him. He'd circled back. I didn't stop again until I saw headlights approaching in the distance. It was the tow truck. I flagged him down and told him everything, my hands still shaking. He just said, half joking, "Guess I showed up just in time." While he hooked up my truck, I kept scanning the dark tree line, expecting to see movement. But there was nothing. Toyota never passed us again. I sold that truck 2 weeks later, and every time it snows now, I can still hear that pounding on the window like it's waiting for me to stop again.
It was the summer of 2012 when I moved into a small rental house near the edge of town. The property backed up to a patch of woods that stretched for miles, and beyond that, nothing but farmland. It was peaceful, too peaceful sometimes. The kind of quiet that makes you notice every creak, every rustle of leaves, every shadow that doesn't quite move the way it should. The landlord told me not to worry about the property line, saying the neighbor behind me kept to himself. That neighbor was the man with the blue tarp. His house sat maybe 100 yards away, barely visible through the trees. But I could always spot that bright blue tarp flapping between the branches like a flag. I figured it was covering firewood or maybe a shed roof. At first I didn't pay much attention, but then I started noticing things. Dead branches were stacked neatly against my fence, tools left out on my side of the property, and one morning, a single footprint in the mud near my back door, barefoot and too big to be mine. I tried to shrug it off until one evening I was grilling outside. The sun was dipping low, cicadas buzzing, when I heard a faint dragging sound coming from the woods, like something heavy being pulled across dirt. I called out, thinking maybe someone needed help, but the sound stopped instantly. The only thing I could hear was my heart pounding. A week later, I caught sight of him for the first time. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when movement through the window caught my eye. A tall man wearing a dark coat despite the heat was standing near the edge of the trees, half hidden behind that tarp. He wasn't doing anything, just watching. I froze, hoping he hadn't seen me, but then he tilted his head slightly like he was studying me. After a few seconds, he turned and disappeared into the woods. That night I hardly slept. I told myself I'd imagined it, but when I stepped outside the next morning, I found something that made my stomach drop. A blue strip of tarp torn off and nailed to my fence post. I called the sheriff's department. They sent a deputy who walked around for a while, took a few notes, and said he'd have a word with the neighbor. The next day, the tarp was gone. The man too. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. But about a month later, I came home late from work to find my back door slightly open. Nothing inside was missing, but every light switch in the house had been turned off. I knew I hadn't left it that way. My hands were shaking as I checked every room, every closet. Then I noticed something odd, the faint smell of damp earth, like wet soil and mold. I moved out 2 days later. A year after that, I ran into my old landlord at a hardware store. He looked surprised to see me and said, "You heard what happened out there, right?" I hadn't. He went on to explain that the new tenants had complained about strange noises coming from the woods, and when police investigated, they found a shallow pit covered with, of all things, a blue tarp. Inside it were animal bones, ropes, and what looked like old clothing. The man who'd lived back there, no one had seen him in months. I never went back to that town again. But sometimes when the wind catches a tarp just right, that sound, the sharp snap and flap of it, still makes my stomach twist.
It was just past midnight when we turned onto the old back road that wound through rural Virginia. The air was thick with fog, the kind that makes headlights useless beyond a few feet. My friend Nate was behind the wheel, joking about how this was the kind of road where people disappear in horror movies. I laughed, at first. The further we drove, the quieter it got. No cars, no crickets, not even the wind. Just the hum of the engine and the rhythmic thump of the tires on cracked asphalt. Then out of nowhere, Nate slammed on the brakes. There, standing dead center in the road, was a woman. Her clothes hung in tatters, clinging to her like wet paper. Her hair was matted and dark, sticking to her face. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stood there, head bowed, arms limp at her sides. Nate rolled down his window, his voice trembling as he called out, "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't answer. She lifted her head slowly, and that's when I saw it. Her face was streaked with blood, and in her right hand, she clutched something glinting under the headlights. A knife. Nate cursed and hit the gas. The tires screamed against the pavement as we swerved around her. I twisted in my seat, watching her in the rearview mirror. She didn't chase us. She just turned, staring after us as the fog swallowed her up. Neither of us said a word for the next 10 miles. When we finally hit the main road again, we pulled into a gas station, shaking. The clerk must have seen the look on our faces because before we could say anything, he muttered, "You boys came off that old county road, didn't you?" We nodded. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Don't go down there again. Folks say that's where the Miller girl died. Her car broke down one night, and when she went looking for help, well, they didn't find her for days." I wanted to believe he was just trying to scare us. But when I glanced back toward the foggy road disappearing into the dark, I could have sworn I saw her again. Just a faint figure standing by the tree line, her head tilted in that same unnatural way. Years later, I moved back near that area. Sometimes, late at night, I'll take that same road, just to see if she's still there. And every now and then, when the fog is thick and the moonlight hits just right, I see something red glinting in the distance. I never stop to find out what it is.
Don't forget to subscribe because there are more stories like this, waiting to be told.